Here's what happened. I was walking along this path and this person was coming up in front of me and I was getting so tense. I decided I wasn't going to talk to this person and say hi to them as they're walking by. Because I wanted to recharge and focus on myself to reconnect with myself. But I kept like tensing up and be like, oh, are they going to judge me for me not saying hi? How do I make sure they still feel comfortable? Like, I want to make sure I don't look like too much like a creep of me just like walking by here. And then I kept having to remind myself, hey, don't make eye contact. Like, just keep your eyes forward, keep them forward, keep walking, keep going. And then they like were getting closer and closer, and I was feeling more tense and more tense. And then they passed me, and I could feel that overwhelm that was there release out. And then I was able to like continue to move on, and I was able to celebrate for a moment. And then literally I had to repeat the process as another person kept coming up to me. And what happened was I had set the intention at this park, which is near where my parents live, to not talk to anyone when I went to this park because I was trying to figure out my harmony of how to make sure that I was recharging and not feeling like I was obligated to say hi to every single person. Because that's how I grew up was, you had to say hi, had to make sure everyone felt comfortable. But that is exhausting and draining if you don't have an ability to make sure that you are recharging and realizing you don't have to say hi to every single person. But I still hadn't figured that out. And even the camp I went to as a kid, like it was shake a hand, make a friend. So it was like ingrained in me for that style, but then it was exhausting and draining. So going to this park and making that intention, it was both scary and overwhelming. And it was the same park where earlier I had made the intention to say hi to every single person because I was so scared at that time to talk to people. So it was interesting to do that, go back to the same environment and have that new intention. But to get through it helped me with more momentum in my life. And I want to share with you 3 habits, some that I used at that time that can create momentum after you feel the overwhelm. This is Make Burnout Extinct. I'm Robert David Weeks. Before getting into it today, I want to say thank you for listening to this episode. And if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe and follow the show. My commitment to you by you doing that is to make this the best show it can be, to be the best storyteller and the best researcher and the best interviewer for the guests that are coming on this show to share their insights. So I want to tell you right here, thank you for your support in this movement. To get into it for today, I want to share how overwhelm connects to burnout. I want to get into sensations from the body of what overwhelm could feel like for you based on my own experiences. I'll get into some fun stories of why you could be feeling the overwhelm, what's coming up for situations that you could relate to. And then I want to get into those 3 habits as well. And I'm going to start backwards. I'm going to tell you what those 3 habits are right away. But it's the first time. So this is the thing. The habits I've shared you these habits before in different ways, but this is the first time I feel like I'm doing a combo of all 3 together for you to be able to use this moving forward. And I try to make these habit combos. Well, I'm just thinking about it because it might be the first one I'm doing it. So my intention for these habit combos, or you can think about it as play combos. I'm trying to think of some other words. You might have to let me know if there's better recs. But it's a way. I want to try to generalize it as much so you can take this and plug it into any situation that you're experiencing the overwhelm. That's where I simplify these to like the basic levels that I can for these, where they can then be interchanged into different moments in life. Because overwhelm comes up, if that's at work with work tasks that you're trying to get done, that could be with challenges that you're having to deal with as a parent or in relationship or with friends. So I feel like this can be really helpful for you in any type of situation that you're dealing with. And we'll get into some more examples based at my expense of like the shit I went through to help you understand more of when the overwhelm can come up. But let's now get into the connection of overwhelm and burnout. So where that happens is remembering that I'll break it down again. Burnout is the spectrum, or how do I want to word it? So there's a spectrum every day that we decide where we land based off of the habits that we're doing in our day. So on one end of the spectrum, you've hit burnout. And that is where you've lost the job. You've had to quit the job. You've closed down the business, let go of the business. Like that's where you're transitioning in work. And it wasn't your choosing. Like in the standpoint, well, not so much your choosing, but it was a result of you feeling exhausted and feeling negative about your work and actually having terrible performance. So that's one end. And then on the other end, you've made burnout extinct. That's where my goal with this show is to try to get you as much time as you can spending in making burnout extinct. And that is where you're feeling energized. You feel the momentum moving forward, like it's that race car going around that racetrack, and that momentum, you're just getting things done. It feels energizing. You can also feel like Hercules is another one that comes up. You're just like, I'm on top of the world. Let's go. Energy. Like it's that type of vibe. So that's on one end of it. And for your habits, you decide, and there's seasons and chapters of life where you could be moving closer to burnout, and then other opportunities where you're moving closer to making burnout extinct, and or you're living on the end of the spectrum where you've made burnout extinct. What happens though is with overwhelm, how it connects to the first red flag of burnout, which is chronic exhaustion. So there's chronic stress that can come from this, of leading you to chronic exhaustion, and with overwhelm, that plays a part in it. And I want to remind you here, that's coming back up, burnout doesn't happen overnight. So this happens over a long period of time. It could be years to hit burnout. So we can recognize the signals of where you're feeling the stress and where it's been chronic over time, and then you're feeling that overwhelm. Those are indications to you of, okay, you've got to change the current behavior that you're doing, the actions that you're doing, and move towards the opposite direction, towards making burnout extinct. And that's what this is about, is like, let's figure out what the hell those signposts are so that you can make a change and move towards making burnout extinct. All right, let's get into now going into why you could be feeling the overwhelm and why that could be coming up. There's one reason I want to highlight, because I do feel like we just don't give ourselves enough grace here. This is where we beat ourselves up internally. And I'm like, damn, like I know for me, it's so much wasted energy that happens with this thought. And it is thinking you have to be perfect. I want to tell you, perfection, it doesn't exist. No matter how many advertisements you see, how many people share with you all the amazingness of what's going on in their life, and they don't share with you any of the problems and challenges that are going on. I got to tell you, we've got challenges. Everyone's got struggles. Everyone's got the problems. We got to just remember that we're not alone in it. You are not alone in that. So you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the perfect parent. You don't have to be the perfect friend. You don't have to be the perfect boss or the perfect coworker or the perfect employee. I'm trying to think of what else is coming up. Man, I'm off on it. You don't have to be the perfect. You could be the best for you. That's a great reframe, because I'm a high performer. I have a big vision for my life. I want to move towards who it is I want to become and grow. So I want to be the best version of me and continue to move towards that. And, I have to remember that may be just an ongoing process and a continuous process. There's never an end destination. And that's what then gets exciting for me, to like enjoy more of the process and realize this is it. Like each moment that we're in, this conversation we're in, like this is it. Having these small moments. So being perfect, I want to remind you, doesn't exist, but that could be one of the reasons why you're feeling that intense overwhelm that can come up, because you're like, man, I'm making mistakes. Things aren't going well. Like this shit sucks. All the other thoughts that could be coming up with that. So now I want to get into the body sensations. So this is the fun part. Again, for me, most of my life, I would numb out a lot of my feelings. And that's where, your go-tos are video games, social media, just like literally numbing it, like not realizing. I remember the first time I noticed that difference of what numbing was compared to feeling. I'm like, oh shit, it felt like an explosion inside of me, where just you feel this like energy and charge, and it's super cool. But when it comes to the actual sensations, if we don't understand what they are, man, that's where it can get chaotic and a little bit like, oh my gosh, something's wrong with me. Like you can have that feeling where like, holy shit, like this is crazy. Like there's something definitely wrong with me. But when you realize, oh, these body sensations, this means I'm overwhelmed. Oh, now it becomes, we'll go back to the quote I say, the more you understand something, the less scary it is. And so when you're able to recognize what these body sensations are telling you, then you can relax a little bit more into it. And actually, it helps you a lot to move through the feeling, which is great. It's this fun combo right there. So for the actual feelings, that's enough of me talking about just hyping it up. Let's get into the actual body sensations here. So the first one is thoughts for me. That's where I start to get these thoughts that come up, similar to the thoughts when that person was walking on the path, where I'm like, oh shit, are they like, how do I make them feel comfortable? Even though I'm not going to say hi, how do I acknowledge them if they do say hi and I don't want to say anything back? Oh my gosh, are they going to judge me for not saying anything back to them? Am I going to ruin their day? Like that thoughts, I mean, it's like a chaotic mess up there. And I think about it as the thoughts tornado. where it's just swirling, it's moving, it's grooving up in there. And that can then move into the rest of the body where you start to feel pressure. And I've talked about it before with the body, that the body is like a balloon. It can handle stress, it can handle overwhelm, it can handle anxiety to a point, like a balloon. It fills up, and then if it pops, I mean, that's hitting burnout. So I felt the balloon filling up for me with overwhelm, where it's that pressure that's starting to build, starts in the stomach, and it builds up, and it's like the tornado hits the pressure, and it's this like all of a sudden mess and dizzy feeling that can come up, where I'm just feeling dizzy, feeling fuzzy, feeling a little all over the place, and it's hard to really focus in. My mind starts pinballing a lot with that. So those are some of the body sensations that could come up for you that you might be able to connect with. And again, it's recognizing, okay, cool, like this for me is overwhelm. And it's interesting when you get to the point where you're like, oh shit, I'm in overwhelm. Okay, things gotta change. So that's where, like, for the habits, I want to get into that and break it down. So usually what happens, and I go to this saying, oh man, it's so interesting because I think of going back to certainty and variety. I talked about that in the latest episode. Those are two needs we need. We need human needs. Like, man, try to say that. Like, what am I saying right now? So with variety and certainty, those are needs that we need. Man, those are human needs. There we go. So what I go to is with certainty. The issue that can come up is when we get overwhelmed, we feel we have to fixate on the thing and like push through, even though we're feeling this tension and this overwhelm, this pressure that's building. We're just like, we got to get it done as fast as we possibly can. And you feel like super tense. So that's where I go into this saying of don't fuck with the flow, where you could feel like you have to stay in the flow of getting whatever it is done without acknowledging the overwhelm. And that's where we can start numbing it out, trying to numb it out. And I've noticed from my own life and, talking to others and seeing it, witnessing it, it's never helpful to push through the overwhelm without acknowledging the overwhelm. Because what happens is then it becomes this turbocharge to exhaustion. Because have you ever done it where you've pushed through on the overwhelm? If that's dealing with, having, as a parent, if you have to deal with all these bunch of different things, you're not even taking a moment to breathe, by the end of the day, you could feel exhausted. Or if it's with work tasks and you're having to put out these metaphorical fires, you got a bunch of different fires going that you're having to put out metaphorically, not literal fires. And then you are, having to go through all these tasks and get messages out to people and clients and all that. It feels like you haven't taken a breath by the end of the day. And then you're exhausted. And so what happens then is through that exhaustion, by you not acknowledging the overwhelm, you get into the feeling like it has to be a longer recovery time for yourself. And that's where momentum gets lost a lot of times. For consistency on moving towards who it is you want to become, the vision you have for your life, this is where you can fall off track, and then it could take a long time to get back on track because you think it's going to take a lot longer because of how you feel to recover. And we get into this whole idea of, oh man, it's going to take me 24 hours. So let's say you had this moment of overwhelm that lasted, maybe an hour. All of a sudden, the next rest of the day, you're taking the day off. It feels like where you're just like, I'm just going to get by and I'm going to restart tomorrow and reset. The issue is, though, it's going to take then a lot longer to move towards who it is you want to become. And I want to try to help speed that process up for you. So what can be important for whenever you, let's say you push through the overwhelm and you don't acknowledge it and you don't go through these habits, here's something to remember. Instead of thinking it's going to take you 24 hours for the next day, give yourself 24 minutes to recover. And this is where you're able to reconnect with your body through movement is really helpful. You can go for a walk without any distractions. You could shake it out, shake the energy out. You could just go through a body scan. Anything that any way that you can connect back to the body. Another one would be a workout. You do an intense workout without any music. That can help you to create some more momentum if you don't take the time to go through these other habits. So that's like I'm trying to think of another way to put it. That's like your bonus safety net, is just give yourself 24 minutes after to recover. So then you can get back on track and it'll be a little bit easier. What I want to now dive into are the 3 habits that could help you so you don't even have to have that recovery time, that long of a recovery time of 24 minutes. You could shrink that into just like continuing to move on to the next thing after you move through this overwhelm. So how those habits are broken down, I want to share them one more time, is stop what you're doing when you feel the overwhelm. What I mean by this is it doesn't mean like stop the actual actions. Because let's say you have to, take care of some situations that are going on at work and you got to still send messages out, but it's to take a pause. And I talked about this in the latest episode, the breath. We're coming back to it. So just take a moment to inhale and out. That small, subtle, I know it's so silly, so weird, so simple, but that subtle shift helps for your body to recognize that you could be feeling overwhelmed right now. And awareness makes it a lot easier than to move through it. So that's where you almost have this, you're almost able to see yourself in front of you and be like, okay, shit, dude, you are feeling the overwhelm right now. Like you have the thought tornado going. It is feeling dizzy in there. You got the pressure going. You took a breath. You're noticing that. That's step one for a habit. And getting consistent with that of awareness is really important. So that could be a good place just to continue to start. Awareness plays a big difference in being able to make a change. The second then habit to add into this is getting outside. Literally, if you can get outside, if that's having to take your kid outside for a little bit, if you're dealing with a challenge with them or a partner, be like, hey, can we talk outside? Whatever you have to do to change to get outside, because I feel we could all notice the difference. For me, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday I was stuck inside. Like I maybe had an hour outside or less. And I'm usually the guy that, spends at least 4 hours. Well, now I've gotten to the point where on average, I try to get at least 4 hours of outside time. And I noticed a difference. Like yesterday, going to bed, I was like, ugh, I'm feeling sluggish. And then today, getting outside more for the 4 hours, I'm like, whew, I'm feeling a big difference. So by getting outside, there's a few things that happen. One is you get outside, so you get fresh air coming in. You are also able to connect with nature outside, especially if there's sunlight there. You can connect that way with sunlight for circadian rhythm. And that will help out with sleep. But then what it does is it changes environment. And it's a lot easier to have a different perspective in a different environment. And you can then look at what you're dealing with in a new way. And that's really helpful for problem solving and creativity that can then flow from that. And by changing the environments, then you, from there, have another moment to reset. And that is where you can reset on understanding and asking yourself, this goes to the third habit, asking yourself, what are you stuck on? Or it could be, what are you putting off? So that could be, I think of for work, like what are you stuck on? Where's that overwhelm building for you? Like, are you not figuring out I'm trying to think how to use Excel properly? Or are you trying to send this document to someone or try to post on social media and it's just not posting? Like, are you stuck on that's causing you to bubble up with overwhelm? Because that is another thing that can happen is with overwhelm, we can feel this pressure of having to get something done on a certain timeline. But if it's not happening, that's where then it bubbles up more with the overwhelm. So that could be one thing, or it could be something you're putting off. I think about that of tasks that I'm putting off or conversations, hard conversations that I'm putting off. And so I've been feeling the overwhelm building up of like, okay, how am I going to deal with this for a conversation? If that's a conversation with a partner, of really having to let them know, hey, how I feel about something that happened earlier. Or that could be with work, really having to send a message out for a situation that came up in work where I thought we were on the same page, but then there was a miscommunication there and I have to send a message to them. So when you can figure out what it is, then you take action on it. And that is where you're going to have to push through some intense resistance that could come up. So in that third habit, you have a moment to understand what it is for what you have to get done for a task or an action. And that could literally, for an action, could be just not doing anything. So that's another thing to remember. It's like not responding or reacting and giving yourself a moment to take in the information and then have another few breaths and then respond back. So I want to make sure I highlight that. But what happens is you will feel resistance in that phase because the body, again, wants to keep you safe. And so if you're feeling that overwhelm, it may be like trying to minimize the amount of actions that you have to get done. But what I can tell you is that by you pushing through that resistance and you have already acknowledged the overwhelm and you know it exists, by pushing through and taking action that is going to help solve the problem that you're dealing with, that is going to provide then relief for the body. And that's going to allow then the overwhelm to move even further through the body and out the body, so that it's not getting stuck. And then you have the relief and the calming energy, and then the like relaxation. You can notice the tension release, shoulders drop. Like those are some of the other body sensations that could come up. Because there can be sometimes this thought of you have to just stay frozen and that it will pass if you stay frozen. It's like the staying in the snowstorm, thinking the snow is going to pass, but you're just stuck there. Like it doesn't happen. Well, I think about it, for what I've noticed in my own experiences and the experience of others, is not helpful to stay frozen in that moment. You can have the pause, but to stay stuck in that thinking it's just going to pass over time, that could take hours or days or weeks. So that is another reminder for you of, hey, take the action, move through that resistance, because it will come up, and it's natural because the body wants to keep you safe. What happens is then when you can move through it and you feel that relief that comes down, I want to make sure to remind you that you could feel some levels of exhaustion that could come up, or fatigue or tiredness. If you need a little moment to give yourself another few minutes to be able to get centered, again, movement is really helpful. Getting your mo time, going and walking around can be helpful. Shaking it out, dancing it out, all that can be absolutely helpful for you as you're going through this process. But again, for when these moments could come up for you for the overwhelm, there's a bunch of, like, I always come back to, for me with this, there's a bunch of different situations where the overwhelm can hit you. And that could be dealing with financial issues. I think about that I remember one story for me where I remember getting a call or having to call my health insurance and realizing I didn't have money to pay my health insurance. And so for me, I lost my health insurance. And that felt so overwhelming, because I'm like, I really now have to take care of my health. I really have to make sure I don't hit burnout again, in case I have to go to the hospital, or, something else happens in my life. And that's big fuel for me sharing this information for you. So that could be a situation that you're dealing with financially. It could be something where, you're having to send a message to a friend and really tell them like what's going on in your life and the struggles that you're dealing with and challenges. And like, you may be the friend that has always been there for everyone else. Because I get you. I know you. You're a giver. You want to be able to support everyone else, but you got to remember to give to yourself. And that is by sending that message. Another one could be trying to feel like you're distracting yourself from a hard conversation that needs to be had with a partner, and being able to just try to go through, checking out, scrolling on social media, looking at videos, doing everything you can to avoid that hard conversation, but you feel the pressure still building and that overwhelm still building, because eventually you're going to have you're going to put that hard conversation further and further off, and it's just going to get stuck in there, or you're going to lean into it and have a hard conversation. So for you, it could be a totally other different situation that can come up. But what I always come back to, though, is making sure I acknowledge the overwhelm. So important to acknowledge our feelings, don't numb it out, honor it, breathe through it, recognize it's there, change the environment, and then be able, because that will shift the perspective, and then be able to take the action of what it is that you're stuck on or putting off and move forward. I believe so much in moving forward rather than staying frozen. Because again, what will happen is when you decide to move forward, you will have resistance come up from the body. It will come up because it wants to keep you safe. And usually that's the go-to. It's like, hey, get frozen, stay frozen like that, and stay stuck in that current phase of currently what's going on. And I just don't believe that is helpful. I know in my life and others as well, taking action and being able to move through it will get you out of that phase and will help that energy to move through you in a faster way. So you can continue to move towards who it is you want to become, and being able to create that momentum towards the vision you have for your life. And I want to remind you again, if you haven't heard that today, that I absolutely believe in you, that you are capable of being able to do this. Yes, there could be this messaging of, just surrender and let things be. But the problem is that messaging can cause us to have mixed ways of navigating life, because surrender doesn't have to mean that you just give up and you don't do anything. For me, surrendering is being able to surrender to the feelings and the feelings of overwhelm that can come over you, but then to realize by opening up that door and letting that pass through, that you are going to be able to move through it and be able to take action and move forward and find your harmony with that. So I want to make sure you know that you're absolutely capable of this. It will have some intense resistance that comes up, but when you know and you can expect it, it goes back to the saying, the more you understand something, the less scary it is. And I want to tell you, you absolutely got this. If you like this episode, please don't forget to rate the podcast to help get this message out of Make Burnout Extinct. And you can share what resonates with you from this episode by connecting with me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. I don't take that for granted ever. And I'm so excited to reconnect again soon.